get to the money, man. Come on, man.
What the me telling a nigga get the fuck away from me got to do with getting the money?
Because what happens is that it gives the idea of what? We can't have these niggas nowhere. That's not what we doing.
It don't give that idea.
It can.
It didn't give that idea.
I'm not saying it did. I'm saying it can.
But we didn't get there yet.
We're not going to get.
The conversation kicked off with one message above everything else. Keep the money flowing. Someone questioned what telling another person to back away had to do with making money in the first place. The response was simple. Moments like that can change how outsiders see the entire crew. Even if one argument seems small, people in business start wondering whether the whole team is difficult to work with. That's exactly where the debate started. One side insisted nothing inappropriate had actually happened. From that perspective, telling someone to move back wasn't disrespectful. It was simply responding to the situation in front of them. The other side wasn't arguing about who was right or wrong. Instead, the focus was on perception. Once cameras catch a heated exchange, people don't always care about context. They only remember the headline. While that conversation was still making rounds, Jim Jones shifted everyone's attention with a full outfit breakdown before the BET Awards. He started from the ground up, showing off designer footwear, before working his way through every piece of clothing, from the shoes to the tuxedo pants, belt, jacket, glasses, and accessories. Every item had its own story and its own reason for being part of the look that night. He even explained where different pieces came from, mentioning recent shopping trips and vintage finds that meant more than simply wearing expensive brands. Some items carried personal history, while others represented milestones from earlier in his career. It wasn't just about fashion. It was about showing that every detail reflected years of work and success rather than a last-minute flex. Later, the atmosphere completely changed once Jim Jones and Max B reunited during the BET Awards. The moment carried real emotion because the two had spent years apart before finding themselves sharing another major stage. Jim admitted the reunion meant everything to him and described it as proof that faith, patience, and perseverance can eventually bring people back together despite everything life throws at them. When reporters asked what it felt like returning alongside Max after so many years, Jim didn't hide his emotions. He admitted it was difficult keeping those feelings under control, especially knowing how much history stood behind the moment. Still, he said the priority remained giving fans the best performance possible before taking time afterward to fully appreciate everything that had happened. The conversation eventually shifted toward the idea of another Versus-style battle. Someone joked that if previous matchups left unfinished business, maybe it was time to settle everything on another stage. The suggestion immediately sparked excitement, with everyone laughing while imagining what that event could look like. Before long, people were already throwing out names and wondering who needed to make the call. Not every topic stayed focused on music, though the group also joked about the difference between keeping money in a stash versus locking it inside a safe. Everyone started teasing one another about who had shared passwords, who trusted the wrong people, and what really counts as protecting your valuables. What began as a simple joke quickly turned into one of the funniest conversations of the episode. The laughter continued as everyone explained their own definition of a stash. One person argued a stash was nothing more than quick spending money hidden around the house, while a safe protected the things that truly mattered. Others joked that if someone already knew exactly where the cash was hidden, then it probably wasn't much of a secret anymore. Another memorable topic came when someone mentioned the biggest highlight from the BET Awards. Surprisingly, the answer wasn't performance or an award. It was seeing Young Miami in person. Right after that came another playful moment when the conversation turned toward the Black national anthem, leading to plenty of jokes once someone admitted they didn't know every word. That immediately opened the door for more friendly roasting. One person couldn't believe anyone could be unfamiliar with such an important song, while the other defended himself by reminding everyone about his Puerto Rican background. The exchange stayed lighthearted, with both sides laughing as the rest of the room piled on with jokes of their own. But once the podcast reached the biggest story of the night, the mood shifted again. Jim Jones finally addressed a viral interaction involving security at the BET Awards. What originally looked like a short disagreement quickly turned into a much bigger discussion about professionalism, public image, and whether emotions nearly created unnecessary problems in front of an entire industry audience. According to Jim, the situation started because security questioned him about a seat that wasn't even the one he was occupying. From his perspective, the request made absolutely no sense. The music inside the venue was loud, the instructions were confusing, and the guard kept approaching their row even though Jim believed he was already sitting exactly where he was supposed to be. Mayo, however, looked at the incident differently. He argued that regardless of who was technically right, reacting too aggressively could create a negative reputation with promoters and event organizers. His advice centered around protecting the brand, avoiding unnecessary headlines, and making sure future business opportunities never became casualties of one emotional moment. Jim wasn't completely convinced by that argument. He maintained that telling someone to back away after repeated interruptions was a reasonable response under the circumstances. From his point of view, standing up for yourself shouldn't automatically be viewed as creating trouble. That disagreement became one of the central debates throughout the entire episode. The crew then revealed something fans hadn't seen before the security incident happened. Because venue rules prevented guests from bringing alcohol inside, they came up with their own workaround. Water bottles were purchased, emptied out, and quietly refilled with liquor before everyone returned to their seats. That decision ended up setting the tone for everything that followed. Everyone started laughing while pointing out that Jim doesn't even drink very often. According to the crew, it only took a couple of drinks before he was already feeling noticeably different. By the time everyone settled back into their seats, they joked that Capo had completely transformed the energy around him, making the rest of the night even more entertaining than anyone expected. The conversation quickly shifted from jokes to business. One side argued that every move should be about protecting the money, while the other couldn't understand what telling someone to back off had to do with losing opportunities. From his perspective, standing up for yourself shouldn't suddenly become bad for business. That's where the disagreement really started taking shape. The response was simple. It wasn't about that single moment. It was about how outsiders might interpret it. Event organizers, sponsors, and promoters don't always know the full story. Sometimes all they see is a viral clip and instantly start questioning whether a crew is worth the headache. That's the kind of damage they were trying to avoid before it ever happened. The other side wasn't convinced at all. He insisted nobody got hurt, nobody was removed from a venue, and the situation never escalated beyond a few words. In his mind, people were overreacting to something that should have ended the moment it happened. He couldn't understand why everyone kept acting like one exchange would suddenly ruin future business. Before all of that unfolded, Jim Jones had everyone talking for a completely different reason. During the BET Awards, he proudly broke down every piece of his outfit from head to toe. Designer shoes, tailored pants, a vintage jacket, luxury accessories, custom frames. He walked viewers through every detail like he was giving a personal fashion tour before stepping onto the carpet. He even explained where several pieces came from, pointing out that some were recent purchases, while others had been part of his collection for years. For him, it wasn't simply about wearing expensive labels. Every item represented a different chapter of his journey, reminding people that his style had always been part of his identity long before social media made luxury fashionable. One of the night's biggest highlights came when Jim reunited with Max B during the BET Awards. After spending years apart, the moment carried genuine emotion for everyone involved. French Montana described the reunion as something much bigger than music, saying it showed that faith, patience, and perseverance could bring people back together despite years of setbacks. Max B admitted the experience was emotional as well. He explained that while the feelings were real, he had to stay focused because the mission that night was giving the audience a memorable performance. Only after the lights went down would he finally allow himself to fully appreciate what the reunion actually meant after all those years. The conversation later drifted toward the possibility of another Verzu-style showdown. The idea immediately sparked laughter as everyone started throwing out names and imagining who should step into the ring next. What began as casual joking quickly turned into a serious discussion about unfinished business and proving who still had the stronger catalog. Not every topic stayed serious for long. Before anyone knew it, the room was laughing over the difference between a stash and a safe. One person argued that a stash was simply easy access cash, while a safe protected the things that truly mattered. The back and forth became one of the funniest moments of the entire episode. The jokes kept rolling when they started discussing the biggest memories from the BET Awards. Seeing Young Miami was mentioned as one of the standout moments, but the conversation took another hilarious turn once someone admitted they didn't know the Black national anthem. That confession instantly opened the door for nonstop teasing around the table. The person on the receiving end defended himself by pointing to his Puerto Rican background, insisting people shouldn't expect everyone to know the same songs. The explanation only made everyone laugh even harder, turning what could have been an awkward moment into one of the podcast's funniest exchanges. Eventually, the discussion returned to the security incident that had already gone viral online. Jim explained that the entire misunderstanding started because security questioned him about a seat that wasn't even close to where he was sitting. With loud music blasting throughout the venue, he felt like the wrong person had been singled out for a problem that wasn't his. Mayo understood why Jim was frustrated, but looked at the bigger picture. His advice was simple: protect the brand before protecting your pride. Even if security made a mistake, one heated clip could create the wrong impression for promoters, sponsors, and future partners watching from the outside. Jim still wasn't buying that argument. He maintained that standing up for yourself doesn't automatically make someone difficult to work with. Since nothing became physical and everyone stayed at the event, he believed the situation had been blown completely out of proportion. In his opinion, people were trying to solve a problem that never truly existed. What made the story spread even faster was the timing. While Maxby was celebrating one of the biggest comeback moments of his career on stage, Jim Jones unexpectedly became part of another viral moment in the crowd. Those two completely different storylines unfolding at the same time gave social media more than enough material to debate long after the awards show ended. Max B's calm demeanor made the entire situation look even more dramatic by comparison. While he was focused on performing, celebrating his return, and soaking in the moment with the crowd, Jim Jones found himself dealing with an unexpected confrontation several rows away. There's absolutely no evidence that Max had anything to do with what happened. But considering everything those two have been through over the years, social media was always going to connect the dots whether it made sense or not. The internet immediately turned the timing into its own storyline. Fans weren't interested in separating facts from coincidence because the optics were simply too perfect. Max stepped back onto one of hip-hop's biggest stages after years away, while Jim was caught in a viral exchange with security at the exact same event. That contrast alone was enough to fuel thousands of posts within minutes. Before long, the jokes completely took over social media. One person laughed that Maxby had the entire arena rocking, while Jim was busy arguing over seats. Another joked that Max must have personally told security to move Jim somewhere else, so he wouldn't have to see him from the stage. Obviously, those comments were made in fun, and nothing suggests Max had any involvement whatsoever. But once the memes started spreading, they weren't slowing down. From a public perception standpoint, the difference couldn't have been much bigger. Max returned from prison, reunited with French Montana, and reminded fans why people had waited so long to see him back. Meanwhile, Jim unexpectedly became part of a completely different viral conversation after cameras caught his disagreement with an usher. Fair or unfair, that's the image social media chose to focus on. The person filming the incident later claimed Jim never actually left the seat. According to that account, security eventually walked away. Nobody was escorted out, and the entire situation ended without becoming physical. That version lines up with Jim's explanation that the incident had been blown out of proportion. Unfortunately, once a short clip reaches the internet, context usually disappears before the facts ever catch up. That's exactly why Mayo's warning carried so much weight during the podcast discussion. His point wasn't necessarily about who was right. It was about understanding how quickly a small disagreement can become a headline once cameras are rolling. Online audiences rarely wait for full explanations. They react first, create narratives second, and ask questions much later, if they ask them at all. In the end, what started as a simple seating issue became another chapter in one of Harlem's longest-running rap rivalries. Whether anyone intended for it to happen or not, fans immediately turned the moment into another episode of Jim Jones versus Max B. One camera angle, a few seconds of video, and suddenly an ordinary misunderstanding was being treated like symbolic revenge years in the making. When you step back and look at everything, the disagreement wasn't really about chairs or security guards. It became a conversation about pride, professionalism, and protecting your reputation in front of the entire music industry. Jim believed standing his ground was a right decision, while Mayo believed protecting future opportunities mattered even more. That's why neither side seemed willing to back down.